Do you ever just wish that all of the mangoes that spawn within Liberty Falls and Terminus, because there's like 500,000 of them within Black Ops 6 Zombies, do you just ever wish like of melee Macchiato who could pull stunts like this? Hello everyone, Clark Shy here, welcome back to another video. Today I'll be talking to you guys whether or not Melee Macchiato is the worst perk within Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Zombies. Now, as for the explanation as to what Melee Macchiato is basically the double tap for melee weapons. It basically does double the melee damage. If you've got a regular gun pulled out, all you need to do is simply press your melee button when you have Melee Macchiato when you've bought it, and it will do a challenge shuffle type powerful punch, or it will do double the melee damage with your dedicated melee weapon. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen a double damage perk within zombies before. The first one was technically Widow's Wine within Black Ops 3. Not only did Widow's Wine wrap around zombies and webs whenever zombies hit you, but it also gave you a slight damage boost within your melee weapon, whether that be the simple knife you spawn in with on the start of a game of BO3, or you got the Bowie knife from the wall. Then it was then introduced as a whole dedicated perk with Infinite Warfare zombies called Slappy Taffy. Slappy Taffy was simply just double the melee damage, and this would then be integrated also within World War II zombies. And then we also saw this within Black Ops 4 with Eternal Razor, but Eternal Razor had some unique quirks to it as well. Every time you meleeed zombies with Eternal Razor as your modifier, not only did it give you double the melee damage, but it would give you some health back with every successful elimination with Eternal Razor. Now, Melee Macchiato actually has some augments that have been taken from Eternal Razor, which I definitely think is very cool, as some of these augments are very helpful, especially the major augments. Major augments include Espresso, which is basically all melee attacks are slightly faster. Vampiric Extraction is where melee attacks heal a small amount of your health, which is basically kind of similar to Eternal Razor's modifier from Black Ops 4 zombies. And then Triple Shot, your punch can hit multiple zombies at once with just one punch, but that only works with the punch and not your dedicated melee weapon. For minor augments, you have Stick and Move, your backpedal speed is increased after a successful melee attack. Strength Training, your punch can one hit kill normal zombies for more rounds, so it's a one hit kill for bonus rounds past, I'd say, round 21. And then Hidden Impact, the melee kills reload a portion of your held weapon. Now, all these augments are great, and some of the issues, including myself, that a lot of people have with Melee Macchiato is that the fact that it feels super delayed and it feels super slow when using. Espresso is really good for getting that delay and slowness out of the way, so if you want to use Melee Macchiato, use Espresso. If you feel like Melee Macchiato is very weak, use the minor augment Strength Training, but it doesn't really last that long. The unfortunate truth is Strength Training only does bonus damage up to 5 extended rounds, so basically it's a one shot kill with just the normal fist up to round 21, and that's without any augments. But if you were to use the Strength Training augment, it would only go up to round 26 one shot, which unfortunately that is quite disappointing. But if you do use the knife, and I'll show you on the screen here, this is actually from one of my Twitch streams, like it's in the description, I stream there every day, and this is when I was actually camera grinding for my knife. If you have gotten your dedicated melee weapon up to a higher rarity alongside Pack Punch with Melee Macchiato with the Strength Training augment, this actually helps you a lot, and honest to god, I kid you not, I don't think it's good against abominations or amalgams, but it was one shot in the mangoes and it was one shot in zombies, and it done really well for me. So honestly, if you're using Melee Macchiato, do not use it when you're using your fists. Use it for your dedicated melee weapon only, and that is genuinely probably the best way to use Melee Macchiato. Now, as for the augments that I personally use, I only use really Strength Training, as again, that does double the damage on higher rounds, and 2, Vampire Extraction basically gives you a small amount of your health back every time you successfully eliminate a zombie. But again, as I mentioned previously, I really think Melee Macchiato is really bad for the fist, but is good for your dedicated melee weapon. But it has some downsides with the melee weapon. For instance, Triple Shot. Triple Shot only works if you're using your fists, which is a disappointment because the fists don't really last that long. But if you use Triple Shot with the knife, you are not eliminating 3 zombies with just one melee attack from your dedicated melee weapon, and that is very disappointing. Another augment that I really don't think is really that good is Stick and Move. I've never used this once, I've never seen anyone really talk about it, I've never really seen anyone who uses it for melee melee Macchiato, so honestly, I don't think it's really needed. And then hidden impact, the only time I see this as good is if you're always playing games constantly beyond end, where you're always running out of ammo and you don't have any points. Hidden impacts can definitely help you, but from my experience, I've personally never had to use it. So honestly, I really would only say the 3 best augments to use would be Espresso, if you hate the delay with melee Macchiato and you're only using the fist, or Vampire Extraction and Strength Training. Along with that, I do want to say melee Macchiato had quite some bad marketing, as whenever melee Macchiato was marketed before Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Zombies released, Jerk only advertised what melee Macchiato was like whenever you used your fists, not whenever you used your dedicated melee weapon. And as I mentioned previously, melee Macchiato isn't that good whenever you're just using your fist alone. It really isn't. So honestly, I feel like melee Macchiato would have been loved more and appreciated more if Jerk marketed the dedicated melee weapon when using melee Macchiato. Now, I did ask your guys' thoughts on Twitter on what your thoughts are on melee Macchiato, and this is what some of you guys said. We got a reply from Swifts, and Swift says they honestly should have just used Eternal Razor but refined it a little bit. Melee Macchiato feels like a downgrade from Eternal Razor, and I personally have to agree. I feel like melee Macchiato, even with the augments that it has, which, you know, again, some augments are taking ideas from Eternal Razor, but whether this is too OP or not, my idea is that maybe they should have made all the little abilities that Eternal Razor had all into one big augment, but that's just me. We got one from Logan, and Logan says it's a good perk with augments. However, I think it's really bad at what it advertises. The gun butt melee buff is nowhere near as powerful as I'd like it to feel. Almost feels like a less effective version of Eternal Razor. I will say it's very needed for melee camos, and again, I will agree on that. The melee camos are great. It's a less effective version of Eternal Razor, and whenever you use your fists with melee Macchiato, it doesn't last that long. It's really not that good, especially with how slow it is and the big delay you get from it. And of course, with the advertisement and the marketing of it, it wasn't really that good either. We got one from Renzaru, and Renzaru says should have made an augment to turn it into Eternal Razor. Could have been a really good perk, but one zombie at a time is a snooze fest. Again, like I said previously, making all the little abilities that Eternal Razor has into one big augment would have been good. Now, we actually have a reply from Renzaru's reply from my tweet, which is actually from FPS Psycho, and I only include this because I think this is a big important thing to point out with melee Macchiato, as I mentioned previously. And FPS Psycho says, same, because the knife swings so much faster. I swear the delay in melee Macchiato is the only thing holding it back from being one of my favorite perks. And again, the augment Espresso definitely does fix this issue, but the fact that we need to rely on an augment to fix a delay and slow issue with melee Macchiato kinda sounds dumb. And we actually have another reply from FPS's Psycho reply, and it's actually from Stanley, and Stanley says, it reminds me of World War II, where if you're melee with the shovel, you're locked into the animation even if it's just for a second. Same with the melee Macchiato punch, it just locks you in. And that could definitely screw you over. Imagine punching the zombie, and again, it's slow and it is a bit delayed whenever you're just using the normal fist with melee Macchiato, and then a bunch of zombies hit you from behind and you can't do anything about it because the animation you're using with the melee Macchiato fist is just locked you in. So that kind of does suck as well. We got one from Hero X Golden, and Hero X Golden says, as a person who goes for melee only recruits, I've used it a ton to practice before attempts in recruit. It's great if you use your dedicated melee, but the punch itself is terrible, and in later rounds you can't effectively knife a zombie because A, the range is so small and the zombies hit so fast that you 80% of the time are trading a hit for hit. You melee zombie, but it gets you a hit on you as well. B, you get swarmed if you try to melee as zombies later rounds unless you have an ether shroud or a decoy, etc. Also, the augment that makes you punch hit multiple zombies only works with the punch itself, not for your melee, which is a hella rip. And the health gain from the one augment is so small, it doesn't even heal you for the amount of zombies hit you for. Now, I'm going to have to agree, the range for melee Macchiato is hella small, and like I mentioned previously, the triple shot augment and that the fact that it only works for your fist and not your dedicated melee weapon is hella disappointing. And again, once you're locked into that animation, 80% of the time, if you're on a high round, you're probably going to die. We got one from Thea Deceiver, and Thea Deceiver says, I haven't used it as much, but I'm about to punch an abomination with it. We'll see how it goes. I pray for your soul and I hope it went well. We got one from John, also known as Spooky's McGee, and Spooky's McGee says, it's good if you're melee only. Other than that, it sucks to be honest. Rarely punches hit unless you're super close. It needs a buff. Now, I will say, I don't think it needs a buff in terms of the dedicated melee weapon, but that's just coming from my experience with it. But in terms of just actually using your fists, I'm going to agree. We got one from Mala, and Mala says, underrated so far, honestly. It's a really fun perk to use, and it makes the knife is OP as fuck. Now, judging by this tweet, I'm going to guess you're talking about the knife and not the fist from Melee Macchiato, because honestly, to say it's an underrated perk, I don't know if I'd go as far to say that. I might if we were only talking about the dedicated melee weapon side of things with Melee Macchiato, but in terms of using it with the fists, I'm going to have to disagree with that statement. We got one from I got $2 and I got $2 says, we got one from I got $2 and I got $2 says, it's too unresponsive and does too little damage. Also, melees gives you less points than headshots now, so it's not as viable as it could be. It's solid for punching armor off the manglers though. Now, I have heard that it's solid punching the manglers off. I know with the dedicated melee weapon it's good, but in terms of actually, you know, using your fists, I'm not super sure on that. But what's the point of getting Melee Macchiato if you're getting less points for melee anyway, so I'll agree with you on that one. We've got one from Revived Gamer, and Revived Gamer says, well, I wish I could say I've used it, but in the matches I've played, I haven't, and honestly, I don't think I was missing out on much based on others' reactions. Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to agree. You haven't missed out on anything. Unless you're going for camera grinding, or you just like to use your dedicated melee weapon a lot with every game of zombies you play within Black Ops 6, then there's no need to buy Melee Macchiato. We got one from Lucas, also known as Nova YT, and he says, it's a fantastic idea, but with pure execution. The problem one, it's way too slow. Already agreed. Problem 2, the range is super short. Also agreed. And then problem 3 is melee kills gives you less points than critical kills. So you spend money on the perk to in return make less money. That alone makes me not want to get it. And I have to agree, that alone makes no sense. Why spend so much money on a perk that just gives you less points anyway, especially when you're not getting much points from melee eliminations? It makes no sense at all. We got one from Freckleson, and Freckleson says, it reeks. We got one from JMS, and JMS says, I see the punch is more of a one-off thing where you can smack a single zombie that's in your way, but it's not too useful. On the other hand, it makes the knife / bat so fun to use, especially because you are able to blow up manglers very easily with it. Better than a Thermal Razor in my opinion. Now, whether to say it's better than a Thermal Razor, I'm gonna have to disagree, because honestly, I don't like the punch, which I've already made clear, but using your dedicated melee weapon, whether that be the bat or the knife, alongside when you purchase Melee Macchiato, it is definitely fun to use. But I don't want to say it's better than the Thermal Razor, because I definitely think all the abilities a Thermal Razor has should have been all combined into one big augment. We got one from Grease Grab, and Grease Grab says, it feels kind of lame, because all it really does is bring back the classic knife system, since that isn't in base BO6, but the corpse launching the zombies is pretty fun. I'm gonna have to agree with that. Using the bat when camera grinding for that, corpse launching zombies was fun using that. We got one from Gahoo, and Gahoo says, the punch feels too slow, like you're locked into the animation. It's also melee benefits melee weapons, so I'll rarely grab it if I'm using regular guns. 100% agree, it does feel too slow, and if you're locked into the animation and you're covered against a bunch of zombies, you're kinda screwed. We got one from Fadane of the White Mountains, and Fadane says, it is a bit like the Bowie knife, good till a certain point, but I don't go out of my way to pick it up. I've always been like that anyway, so gonna agree on that one. We got one from the ZSP, and ZSP says, it only helps in boosting damage on your proper melee weapons, as well as giving you a much needed survivability boost with the health on hit. But the actual function of the perk itself, the punch is awful and not worth using. Again, like I've mentioned with every comment that we've gone from here, the punch is awful, but if you use it with your dedicated melee weapon, it's actually good. But the proper function of it, when using, you know, your dedicated fists, it's not that good at all. We got one from Akumu, and Akumu says, only problem is that the multi-hit augment doesn't work with melee weapons. Other than that, it's chill. Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest disappointment, or if not the biggest disappointment with Melee Macchiato, the fact that triple shot does not work with your dedicated melee weapon. We got one from FWA, and FWA says, waste of a perk as it gives no benefits if you aren't running a dedicated melee build. I'll agree on that, because only time I've ever really used Melee Macchiato, the majority of the time, is when I've been camera grinding for both the baseball bat and the knife. And the last one we have here is from Oculice, and Oculice says, cool in concept with the punch, but the punch is absolutely useless. Other than for doing a glitch, punch does about 2000 damage. Pat 3 legendary knife does 50,000 with Melee Macchiato and attacks way faster. Novelty wore off after about 2 kills with the punch. Again, that's just proof right there. 50,000 damage compared to 2,000 damage, you already know what the winner is on that one. Is Melee Macchiato the worst perk within the whole of zombies? No. But is it the worst perk within Black Ops 6? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say yes. But yes guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about Melee Macchiato, and let me know how much you use it. What do you think could be improved upon it, or do you think it's fine how it is? Yes guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all within the next video or live stream. And goodbye.